It's March 28th, 2018. This is WDYTA. I'm Gavin.
I'm Alan.
And we're joined tonight by special guest Brian. And tonight we're talking about collectibles. So, Alan, what do you think about collectibles?
So, I've been meaning to do an episode on collectibles. Surprise, surprise, we actually did one.
I was going to say, maybe we should bring up the fact that we've already done this episode before.
We've actually done this episode before, and somehow it either got lost or deleted or didn't process, or I sleep deleted it. I have no idea what happened to it, so we're redoing it, kind of. We don't remember everything we said, obviously. But I want to do an episode about collectibles because I'm a person that collects, like, some people call it a hobby, but I collect comic books. I used to collect a ton of toys when I was in my teens. And I used to collect a ton of cards when I was younger. I used to collect baseball cards, football cards. So that's a different type of collecting. But nowadays I tend to collect art. I tend to collect comic books still. That never went away. And if I really want to collect something that people would still call, I mean, I have statues from Sideshow. People still call those toys, but they're statues, man. I can't.
No, they're toys.
Shut up, Brian.
They're toys.
Your doll's back on the shelf.
I can't play with these things. They're so freaking big. But regardless, I did fall into a bad habit at one point of collecting Funkos, which I've curbed a ton. I have.
Why don't you describe your bad habit of Funkos, Alan?
I have almost 3 storage bins full of Funko Pops.
I definitely thought you were going to say 2,000, so not as bad.
I had a shelf of them here, and then when at one point Nancy, my wife, was like, "This is getting out of control," and I was like, "Yeah." And I was only buying. The problem was I was buying all the stuff that was nostalgic to me, right? Like He-Man and TMNT, comic book related things. But then I thought I could ease it up by going into a state of mind of only buying like the rare ones, these ones. The problem is there's a crap ton of those, right?
I guess they're not that rare if there's a crap ton of them.
If there's the thing is they do this thing called they do this. Funko's got this. They figured out that their market wants all of it, and they do this thing called a Chase Funko Pop that you can only get at specific stores. So like Target has a couple, Walgreens has a couple, Walmart, what is it called? FYC or some FYE in the malls.
Yep, FYE.
Yeah, FYE. Hot Topic. So you name the store, and almost every like Costco and Walgreens, like they have specific ones that you can only get by going to Costco or Walgreens. You know what I mean?
So wait, what's the Costco exclusive?
So I have no idea. I remember the Walmart one there was a green goblin from Spider-Man Chase that you can only get at Walgreens.
So what this sounds like is Beanie Babies 2.0.
Absolutely. It's like I don't remember. I remember the Beanie Baby hype, but I don't remember if Beanie Babies were if they had that extra angle where they're like you can only get it at Hallmark or you can only get it at Jewel.
No, you could get them all over, but it was a different time then too, because there wasn't as much. People just weren't aware of how big collecting was. I mean, there was a slight hint of it, but now that everybody can see online the mass number of products that are out there, it's crazy. Now, I don't know if this is true for you, Alan, but for my torrid love affair with collecting, I came to find out that mine was really more about the thrill of the hunt than actually having the pieces.
Yeah. Yes. And that's kind of where I stand now with it. When I was younger, it was just like I had to have them all.
Right.
Like I've eBayed so much stuff in the last 3 years. But yeah, I'm with you on that one. It's the thrill of the hunt now. But there's some stuff that I like when I was buying them when I was younger. It's like I have to have remember those old Marvel toys that came out back in the day in like the early 90s?
Oh yeah, totally.
Real stiff arms, like Wolverine had claws that came out. Like they were garbage, but I bought them. At the time, they were the hype.
They were amazing. Yep.
Yeah, and I bought all of them, man. I'm talking like, you name the crappiest figure in that line.
Of course, yeah.
You know, like
you had to have them.
And I was like, what was it? Remember Garbage Pail Kids?
Oh, that I think that's really like where my collecting started. So like I was a young kid and we'd have lemonade stands so that we could raise enough money to then walk down to the little, it wasn't even a 7-Eleven then, it was called Highs where I was, High, like apostrophe S. And we'd get enough money, we'd sell enough so that we could go and buy a couple packs of Garbage Pail Kids. And then everybody that was in on it, we would then like put them in a bucket and pick them out one by one. And that, like, once you got that list and saw who all the cards were, it's like, damn, I've got to get more. I got to sell more lemonade.
There's a lot of lemonade, man.
Yeah, it was. It was a racket too. We'd take the money, we'd go buy like the packages of soft batch cookies at the convenience store, and then resell those at a markup as individual cookies to keep funding that habit of the Garbage Pail Kids.
So, Garbage Pail Kids, I used to collect those, but I didn't have that extra. It was just like I had whatever I had. I didn't have a high for it. But I remember the first time I really started collecting was there was a kid in our school whose dad owned a convenience store, and they would have a rack of comic books. And what he did was, he was brilliant actually. He came to school with like a bag full of comic books, and I was like, ooh, I kind of want all of those. You know, I had $5 for lunch. I'd give him $5 for 5 comic books because they were that.
And you had a lot of lunch money, man.
$5? Yeah, I guess. I used it all, and I bought all these comics from him. And at that point, I was still kind of I was not really. I don't know if you call it collecting versus just hoarding up comic books. I love comic books, but then I kind of figured out what I really liked, and then I started collecting them. Right, like Batman and X-Men were my favorites. Green Lantern. Nowadays it's a little more like indie comics, right? But I'm trying to think like what else I really like collected. Comics was my main. That was my main jam.
Yeah. It's easier for me to go back to the last thing I collected and work my way backwards to childhood. Like I had to stop recently with the Lego minifigures. I think they're up to like series 17 or 18 now.
Packs?
Yeah, the blind bags. Whoa. And I was getting them, like I would get the app online. There's a couple different apps so you can see who all the characters are in the series. And I'd be standing there in a Toys R Us like this.
Feeling them up?
Feeling them up to feel what the different pieces were, to figure out who it was, while like TRU employees are walking by at this weird old dude just kind of like touching this package in weird ways. Like, and it's like, nope, I know this one.
Sort it out. Nope. It's really hard to do that.
I finally cracked the habit because, I mean, it was like I had to try and have every single one in every line. And I had a great collection. I have like 12 different like Lego display cases. And finally, a couple of years ago, my son was making figures and he wanted to trade them for the ones that were like put together. And finally I broke and I was like, all right, you make a cool figure, I'll trade you one of these. And now just my collection is just scattered in a giant bin of Legos, and just one day I think I'll be able to put them all back together in a very painstaking time process to hopefully rebuild my collection.
Well, I think that's what eventually ends up happening. Either you end up completely giving up on it when you have your epiphany, or you end up doing what's like some people end up doing, is selling, right?
Right.
Like Gavin, I thought last time we talked about this, didn't you collect something? I could have sworn.
I mean, I played Magic the Gathering, but I didn't necessarily collect it. I just sort of bought the cards that... Okay, I'll take that back. Okay, so the collecting that I did for Magic the Gathering was really about playing the market.
Sure.
So I played Magic the Gathering for years, played competitively for like 15 years, and then sold off my collection to become a full-time illustrator. So... I don't know. It's a different kind of collecting, though, because all I was doing was speculating on the market. I was looking at, okay, these are cards that are popular, these are cards that aren't, and trying to exploit the value between, okay, these are ones that are not popular now, but they're going to be popular, so I buy up a bunch of them, and then they shoot up in price, and then I sell them.
That's totally different than, like, addictive personality.
Yeah, it's not like I felt a compulsion to collect all of the cards. There's definitely, like, part of me that thought that would be cool, but I never bothered, I guess. I don't know. I think I got turned off a little bit because the early on when I was playing Magic the Gathering, I didn't have any idea what any of the cards were worth, right? So I had a fairly rare card that I didn't know was rare. And, you know, you go to the game store and there's guys there that are, you know, experts, right? They know way more than you do. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got this card, and they're like, oh, I'll trade you for it. And I'm like, okay. And you set it down, and then like they're laying out card after card after card, and they're like, here, look through this box. You can pick anything you want. And I'm like picking like 20 different rare cards, or I'm like, this is insane. Turns out the card I had was worth at least $100. So I'm like, oh, cool. Like, and I got traded 25-cent crap. So I don't know. I learned that lesson early on, and then throughout the rest of my collecting days of Magic, it was basically just for playing.
So should I show him the card, Gavin?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
What's the card?
This was more exciting when I showed it the first time. Gavin believes.
Well, a little bit of lead up though, because we were talking. One of the things we were talking about was like collectible things that still hold their value, because it's pretty rare at this point. Because it seems that most companies are in on the fact that things when people perceive them as collectible, they tend to buy more of them. So, we talked about Pogs and Beanie Babies, and Beanie Babies, I think, are quintessential. Like, we've hit marketing peak for collectibles. This is the model that works, and that's why we see it replicated with Funko. But one of the most expensive Beanie Babies that I had found previously was one listed for $248,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a Princess Diana first edition. Now, it's listed for that. It's not selling for that.
Sure.
So my guess is that is price framing, and the most recent one that I found that was sold for $10,000 in 2013. Still $10,000.
Yep, and that's been quite some time between 2013 and now.
Right.
So very interesting. How do you guys feel about the whole blind bag phenomenon? I mean, I was first introduced to it in like 2007-ish when I first went into an Urban Outfit. Yeah, I went into like an Urban Outfitters, and I saw these Kid Robot toys after going to like the Atlanta Comics Expo before it merged with Dragon Con. I was like, wow, there's these weird designer toys, because being a graphic designer and seeing that and street art all kind of fused with these weird vinyl shapes.
Yeah,
and the idea that you didn't know what you were getting was so thrilling.
I liked, so the one thing I liked about Kid Robot stuff was it was different for starters, right? Like vinyl sculpts, then which now is Funko is basically a vinyl sculpt, but those were like not those that was like the first introduction to those things, right? I feel like whoever made Funko or created Funko used to work for Kid Robot, but I like the idea of the blind box because it created this extra level of like hype. But then at the same time, when those were out, that's kind of like, I think right around then is also when eBay came out. So if you're like, I really want this specific one, I can't. I already spent X amount of dollars. I opened up X amount of boxes, and I still didn't freaking get the one sculpt or toy or robot or whatever it is I wanted. You can go to eBay and find it, right?
Right, and the price is all jacked up because that's one of the chase figures.
That's one of the hardest ones to find, right? Yeah. They had that like one on the back, they circle it, and you'd be like, oh, I'm never getting that one.
Reminds me a little bit of McDonald's Monopoly. You can get Boardwalk, but you never get Park Place. So
I feel like they have to make one Park Place. Otherwise it's illegal. But it's like you
see people that list their Boardwalk Monopoly pieces on eBay for $500,000. They're like, I'll split it with you. Oh, you got Park Place? I got Boardwalk.
You need a crazy legal.
The mystery bags, to me, they're just booster packs, right? It's the same thing that Magic the Gathering's model. So the way that for me that it worked with Magic the Gathering is you would buy a booster box of cards, you'd open them all, and then you'd value out, okay, this is a booster box for this set. Average, it's worth X amount of dollars. As long as X is greater than the cost of a booster box, you just buy boxes.
Yes.
Sure.
Right. So
always got, well, at least if I remember correctly, those boosters came with at least one rare. Something.
Yeah. Well, they've changed it a little bit over the years because now they've introduced mythic rares, and now there's even a higher tier than that, which I don't really know a whole lot about at this point because I haven't been into it for a while. But I feel like you could do a similar thing with the mystery bags or whatever too, if any of them were that hot. I don't know if any of them are. So
well, one other thing that's happening though with those bags is they've infused it. It's become such a big part of toy culture now.
Yeah,
that it's in everything. Like even stuff that my 4-year-old daughter is familiar with blind bags because she's been getting them now for a couple of years, so that at a very young age, kids are indoctrinated into that whole collector's bug and seeing the sheet of all the different things, the possibilities they could get. It's like, oh, I got this one. Oh, I really want this one.
That's weird.
Comic book. If you go to a Comic-Con, they got those dudes with the giant square boxes with
the mystery boxes at comic conventions. Yeah,
they sell like crazy. And every time I talk to people and be like, "Did you get anything cool out of there?" So it's half and half, right? Some people are like, "Yeah, I got this cool hat." Some people are like, "I got nothing but garbage."
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's the gamble you take. It's 20.
So it's interesting if these marketing companies are trying to if these whatever are trying to get in on kids. This is weird to me because we're seeing this trend in video games too, where mystery boxes are now everywhere in video games, and there's a really weird like gambling ethical issue that's starting to happen with it. There's a huge backlash to that new Star Wars game that EA came out with that was basically like, you're going to buy the game, but you don't get everything in the game. You have to then play the game and or spend money to get the rest of the game, which is hidden in these boxes that you need to open. And then maybe you'll get a Jedi and be able to play the whole game at some point.
Are you talking about microtransactions?
Yeah, this kind of comes back to microtransactions, but it's also loot boxes. Like these are huge.
They have those in Destiny, right? They're called engrams.
Yeah. So here's the problem, and this is why this trend is happening. This trend is happening because video games should cost more than $60. However, the market theoretically can't push the price past $60. So these game companies are trying to figure out other ways to make money.
Yeah, well,
this is why we're seeing tons of downloadable content. This is why we're seeing these weird loot boxes, microtransactions, all of this stuff. So I don't know. I feel weird about these grab bags, booster packs. This style of marketing a product to me feels it feels like gambling. It feels a little predatory, and it feels like gambling to me.
It totally is.
It's the same with like. So I'm gonna keep going back to the comic books. That's where my wheelhouse is. But like when I was younger, you'd have to get to the comic book store on time to get issues as they were selling out, right? Because your local comic book store might have only carried 10 issues of whatever. Let's go with Spider-Man #1, Todd McFarlane run. Okay,
right. No, every store had a gazillion of those.
Okay, bad example. But whatever, you get my point. But now what they do is they have the issue, then they have like 5 variants, and the variants tend to, if you were to look them up, the main issue is worth a little bit more, but the variants are all in the same, usually in the same cost bracket, depending on the artist that did the cover. But then on top of that, they've introduced a whole new concept where you can get the cover blank, and then if you meet an artist who worked on that issue or works for them, you can have them sketch on the cover, which
have them draw you a cover.
It would draw you it's a blank cover, and you can actually buy a blank cover for like whatever Spider-Gwen, right? And have any artist you want draw on it, and it's still worth something because it's a blank cover that a industry artist drew on or something. But
a lot of fan artists do that as well.
Yeah, sure. But if you were to like say get a Spider-Man #1 blank cover and then Todd McFarlane drew on it, it's worth a lot of money.
Good luck with that.
That's what I want to show you. Well, that's what I want to show you.
I just happen to have it right here.
I know, but this is my CG Seed Spider-Man one. Let me see. I can see it better.
I remember when that came out.
So this is the #1, the silver copy.
Yep.
But this is the other thing they've got people doing, right? You seal it in this plastic case. You can pry this thing open if you want, but you screw it all up if you do that.
And comics are meant to be read.
I have a copy of this I can read, obviously, right? But I met Todd McFarlane once. I was like, I'm gonna have him. So he signed it. Oh, it's shiny. But once he signed it, I got it rated, and I got a 9.8, which tells you how well I take care of my comic books. I don't think I've ever seen a perfect 10, but in theory, you should be able to look up this number and see that I own it, or I have a copy of it or something. I don't think I registered this thing, but
so they can track you down.
So the whole point of the CGC rating system is instead of hunting down a copy of a comic book, so I've got, it's kind of, I only have 3 things CGC. The other thing I have is a Jim Lee Batman 608 signed.
Well, I figure you're just showing these off on the internet, Alan.
Oh, who's gonna come?
It's like, where's Alan live?
And then this is my favorite one, man. This is a
nice
third printing, but the original first appearance of Batman, 9.6. It's old. I got it on eBay once from a guy, but this is a gift to myself when I graduated, basically. But
awesome.
You know, I don't do that as often because after a while in my head I was like, what are you doing? You already have all these comics sealed up. Like, you don't need to see. I like the idea of the CGC. It's a concept that they created. It's like, I don't know if you call that another form of a microtransaction, but it's some form of getting more money off the collector, right? Well, I don't know what the right terminology is for it, but you basically created CGC. When they came out, at first people were like, I don't think I want to do this to my comic books. But once you realize, dude, it like triples the value of the comic book.
Right.
It's insane how high the comic book goes up in value if you seal it off in there.
Right, because you're legitimately getting it rated.
Yes.
From an authorized source.
Correct.
That everybody agrees that they're what they say is gold.
So that's what I want to do with. So this is what I was going to show you before. Gavin thinks this is an original. I'm not 100% sure, but this is one of the rare Black Lotus cards from Magic the Gathering that I
on
at a garage sale when I was younger.
Nice.
And I don't know. So when Gavin comes to the city next week, he can look at it a little closer.
Take a look.
Excellent. Break out the magnifying glass.
Yeah, he's gonna put on his it's not a monocle. What do you call it when you're like a diamond guy?
Yep. A little bit of lemon juice to test the printing a little bit.
Nah, I told him the only way to know for sure is to do the rip test.
It's like you rip it, and if it's real, you'll know it. It's like that is worth nothing.
That's fantastic.
Sounds like a horrible way to test it, by the way.
So
that's the only way to know.
When talking about collecting, one of my favorite and last epic collecting journeys was probably like 15-ish years ago when there was a new line of Masters of the Universe figures, and they had such crappy distribution that like it was a reboot, but it was like it wasn't like using the same molds and making them like the 80s figures, but it was the newer sculpts. So the first like wave or two came out, and they were pretty much everywhere. You could get them at Toys R Us. You could get them at KB's because they still existed.
Oh man, KB.
But then there was like a line of like the snake people, and there were rumors around that they were at some place called Aldi, which I didn't know what an Aldi grocery store was at the time because they weren't really on the East Coast. I was living in Atlanta, and my now wife Carrie and my buddy Sam were driving up to Maryland, where I'm from. And what would normally take like a 10-hour drive was easily like 15 hours because it's like if we saw a sign for an Aldi, we'd stop and check it and see if they had the figures. And then they didn't have it, but we saw a Toys R Us off the same exit, so we'd go and check out there. And then we'd go to a Walmart and then a Toys R Us. It was like this crazy, like, I've got to find something. No, the next place, that's going to be the one where the treasure is. And it just ended up being exhausting and an interesting drive, but there were no like real rewards from it. That's what collecting does to my brain.
I've been in, I don't know if I've been in that crazy a scenario, but you know, I've gone to like toys when Star Wars re-released the Force figurines, like when they were re-releasing the special edition. So Star Wars is a prime example of a toy that people collected to such a level that when, you know, I don't know how much you know about the Star Wars Kenner toys, but they released the first edition of those toys when Star Wars New Hope came out. George Lucas was filming Empire. Nobody had any idea what the movie is called. Kenner was doing so well with those figurines. They made characters and vehicles to keep selling that didn't exist in the movie world, and people just kept buying it all up, you know?
Because they were awesome.
Because they were, I loved my Star Wars collectibles, man. But when the Force, I think they're called Force Awakens or Force...
Power of the Force.
Power of the Force, yeah. When the special editions came out, dude, I legit would go to Toys R Us like 30 or 40 minutes before the store opened and get in line with a bunch of dealers, like collectors. But I was in line with dealers. I was like a kid who wanted to, like, I just wanted to own it, right? Like, I wasn't going to flip it and sell it later. I wanted, like, you know, I knew, like, enough, like, about, like, I knew there was a Boba Fett with a circle on his hand. There's one with 3 lines, and the one with 3 lines was the rare one, you know, like, but there would only be, like, 1 per box. And I was like, I got to beat these freaking dealers to that room or that box, and that was, I felt very much scared. Like those guys like would legitimately trample a kid, you know,
Yeah, totally,
to get to what they needed. And at the same time, it was also like Hot Wheels, I think. At the same time that came out, Hot Wheels released their Treasure series, which is like gold cars, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And those also only came up with the boxes, and you had to be at those stores as the doors are opening. You're pushing your way through and fighting with other dealers who might be your friends. You know, you're like, hey, what's up, Bill? What's up, Tom? Smack. You know.
Speaking of the Star Wars stuff, did you go to the like Episode 1 toy release that was like a week before the movie came out?
No,
or it might have been a couple days. It was a midnight release everywhere, and I went to that, and it was crazy.
I think when that was happening, is like my dad was like, "Nah, we're not doing that." You know, like there was a line, like there's only so many things he's willing to do.
Gotcha.
So much crazy. Plus, I'm spending my own money at this point, right? Like so.
Yeah.
But I always think back on those, like the Master of the Universe stuff. I think if that was happening when I had money, I would probably have done the same thing you did, minus stopping at every single store. But I had all the old Master of the Universe sculpts, man. I love those.
I still have a bunch of those from that run. I ended up finding a KB that was going out of business, and they had a bunch of them. So then I bought two, and so like now all the ones that I was keeping like nice and clean are now in my son's room, and I still have a bunch of unopened ones under the house.
So their Master of the Universe Funko Pop line is insanely popular right now.
I'm not even gonna look at it. I know better.
I think I have. Do I have a He-Man? I have a He-Man. That was the last thing I bought. Please hold a second.
Ooh, one of my earlier favorite toys, or not like around the same time as the He-Man ones. There was a line. Nice.
This is the last thing I bought.
Yeah. Get us sing the song, Alan.
What song?
Hey, yeah.
Hey, yeah. What?
You need to. And I gotta bring this up on YouTube.
Yeah,
awesome.
I don't know what song you're talking about.
Go ahead. You gotta keep telling your story, Brian.
Come on. I loved the Muppets toy line that came out from I can't remember the name of the company. It was around the same time as the He-Man stuff. So it was.
Is it Mattel?
Probably about 15. No, it was probably about 15 years ago. It was a company out of Maryland, and the sculpts on those the Muppets toys were fantastic, and the play sets were amazing.
I think the
Pigs in Space one.
That did I remember McDonald's did a run of Muppet Babies.
No,
they were like perfect.
The stuffed animal ones, or
no, not the stuffed animals. They were like Gonzo was on a big wheel, like it's plastic. Like
that was awesome. Those were fantastic.
I mean, I had them all. Okay, let's see this video, Gavin. Hang on, let me share your screen.
Yeah. So we're gonna see if we can get this video deleted too.
Wait, I think you need to. Can you share your screen? You need to share your screen and then.
I'm already sharing my screen.
How come I don't see it?
I should have practiced it before, but anyway.
I see it.
Okay, I see it.
There you go.
I think that's just got to be Alan's theme song whenever he walks down like a convention hall at a show.
Don't give him ideas, man. What's wrong with you?
Going down.
Okay, I'll practice this for you next week.
That is now burned into my brain forever.
I've never seen that.
There you go. You're welcome.
Yep. Nice you learn something new every day.
That's my contribution to the He-Man discussion.
Yeah, Kevin remembers one thing about He-Man is that. So on another side note, so we're talking about collectibles as far as toys, right? But you know, I think last time we discussed other stuff people collect too, like books, not comic books. Okay.
Well, this one I can actually interject in a little bit because
go for it.
I collect. I mean, I've started a very small collection of oddities.
Yes.
I've got a few skulls. I've got a replica vampire bat skull. I've got I'm looking up at him now, so I'm looking. I've got a goat, and I have a deer that my sister found.
This is the only thing I have that comes as close to being a bat.
Yeah, so for me, I find, I like collecting things that inspire me, not necessarily like they hold some kind of value, I'm sure, but that's like not really my primary concern. It's also not like a compulsion to gotta catch them all,
Yeah, but I think as an artist, artists, I should say, we're all artists. We've gone into the state of mind now where we collect these little, I don't want to call them knickknacks, but little things that we like to keep around our area. Like in your case, it's these skulls, In sure. My case, I've got little I've got like Link, whoop, and then I've also got like Cade from Destiny.
Nice.
Just random things like that. I don't really have too many skulls because Nancy would freak out. But
here's this is my newest one, my favorite. Here we go.
Oh yeah. What is
that?
Zoom back.
Oh, so cute.
Go back a little bit.
This is my vampire bat skull.
Excellent. That's great.
Show don't you have like an embryo?
Oh no. What I do have, these are gaffs. They're fakes, but they are weird little creatures in a jar.
Oh yeah, I think that's fantastic. My favorite actually.
Yeah. And these are rad, and they're made with resin rather than like you
formaldehyde.
Yeah, they're solid in there, but they're really cool. I've ran into a few different people at comic conventions that sell this kind of stuff. There was one person, I wish I could remember her name to give her a shout out, but she's the one that did the replica vampire bat skull, and she takes real skulls and makes molds of them, and then casts them, and she does two different versions. One's like here, I can show you the detail.
I feel like if I ever see this person at a show, you gotta let me know.
She doesn't do shows anymore. She's in a doctorate program or something now. So this is one of hers too, which is like a raven or something. Maybe it's an owl. Like a rook. But it's not as detailed as the vampire bat one. And so she does two different versions where she'll do these ones that are sort of a little bit more sealed up and a little bit less delicate, and they're cheaper because she doesn't have to spend as much time on them. And then the other ones, she's doing like really intricate sculpting and goes in there and cleans out and makes them as accurate as possible. So this gives you a way to collect skulls of endangered things because they're not really the skulls. There's a lot of endangered stuff that you can't sell. Those
are all replicas, you said, right?
What's up?
They're all replicas?
Yeah, hers are all replicas. There's another guy who's a trapper, and that's where I got my other skulls. I've got a coyote as well.
I need to buy some of the stuff.
I've seen some cool
furs and stuff.
Nice. I've seen some cool replica skulls of dinosaur type stuff, like saber-toothed tigers and things like that at a shop once, and I thought they were pretty amazing, especially the way that they were stained and painted.
Oh yeah,
added a nice level to it.
I'm not sure what the next thing I want to grab is. Sometimes I have to like go into a place or see somebody at a convention to decide, oh, that's the thing I need. You know what I mean?
Right.
I happen to have a really good show. Oh, you have a skull for $300. Yep, I'll take that. Like
the guy who had this bat, his whole thing was he had a shit ton of bats and lizards and stuff, and they're all like, I don't know if he hunts them or buys them or what he does, but they were all in cages and jars and stuff like that. And I was like, are those replicas? He's like, no, that's the real deal. And I was like, great. I'll take the bat,
Nice.
But
right.
It didn't end well when I got home with it. But
although I think the next big purchase I want to make is a shrunken head. I'm pretty sure I want a shrunken head.
Like a real shrunken head?
Yeah, like a real shrunken head. Yeah.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah, I don't think they're too bad. You can get ones that are like made for tourists, which is pretty funny. I worry a little bit that it's exploitative, though, that it's like, oh, grandpa died, let's turn his head into a shrunken head and sell it to tourists. And that makes me a little worried. So.
Interesting.
I think you got to be worried if it's cursed.
Are you
if it's cursed, it's more valuable.
There's a oddities Facebook group. Are you part of that?
No, but I will be now.
I'll send you that. It's like Oddities Warehouse.
I'm a little upset with Facebook as of late, but that's fine.
Yeah. They keep advertising they're going to clean it up, but I don't want to get into it. I'm trying to remember what the other thing was. The other thing was that we discussed last time.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting with collecting stuff in general is that a lot of times it functions as a proxy currency, which is why it holds value. It's basically like, oh, we've decided that this thing is worth X amount of dollars because that's what people are willing to pay for it. And now, I mean, there's sort of a question of what becomes collectible as we move into the digital age, right? So I think that's why we're seeing things like Bitcoin happen, right? Which is not only is it a real currency, but it's like there was that, you know, like Brian, like what you're saying, there was that chase, right? Where everybody's like, this is the new gold rush and everybody's trying to get on board and figure it out. And
so you
fire truck outside, sorry. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where digital stuff takes us next, because there's the potential idea of, I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Team Fortress, the video game, but there's items in Team Fortress. This is all digital, they're hats. They're hats your characters can wear. And there's all different hats, and there's an entire market where people are making thousands of dollars off of selling these digital hats.
It's just like buying an outfit in what do you call it? Fucking golden tea, right?
Didn't people start doing that like in the early days of WoW as well?
Well, the thing that's different with Team Fortress is you can actually trade these items. So that's, I think, what actually makes it able to be a proxy currency, because now you can so for instance, the game came out on Mac, and if you downloaded the game onto your Mac, your character got earbuds. So it was only for a limited time, and it was only people who installed it on their Mac computer. Their character got earbuds, and these ended up being one of the more valuable items in the game because they were rare. So people like started using it as a proxy currency, meaning like, oh, I want that hat. It's worth 3 buds, right? It's worth, or this one's worth 5 buds. And this also happened with Diablo 2 way back in the day. And I remember everybody using a ring called the Stone of Jordan, which was like, that was the currency because gold was worthless in that game. So you could trade your Stones of Jordans for other items. I don't know. I just find it really like fascinating that becomes a thing. I mean, I guess when you go back to the history and the beginning of currency in general, like teeth were used. So,
so that's kind of like, so like you just reminded me of like I was trying to like, you know, like how people like this things have values on them. Like for example, like my friends used to collect baseball cards, and I never understood why like they were worth thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's all perceived value. It's all, oh, well, somebody else decided this was worth $1,000. So, like,
my friend had like an upper deck. So, if you go in basketball, he had an upper deck. I don't know if it came out from the football or the baseball side of it, but it was a Bo Jackson card, and you know that dude used to play football and baseball, and it was like this very rare upper deck Bo Jackson card. It was worth like a couple $100 at the time. I'm sure it's worth a lot more now or nothing, but it was the biggest deal. And I was just like, and I was this kid standing up to the side like, nah, what?
Ours was Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card.
Oh yeah,
I remember everybody being like, "You got the Ken Griffey Jr. rookie?" I was like, "No, I don't even collect baseball cards."
Marvel. I remember for a while, Marvel had 3 sets of their cards. They did their own card series. I've got them all. I still have them all in a binder. I have all complete collections of all 3, and I think if I look them up on eBay, they're probably worth $100 now. And the other thing I want to say is like it's gotten easier to like just like. I used to always be that guy who's like, I can't sell this because it's gonna be worth more later. But I've been hanging around with people now who are like my friend Greg and my friend Matt. They're like, they just sell it all. Like Greg will be like, I need to sell this comic because I want to buy this. Like he wants to buy a Sideshow statue, right? But he's got so many of them, and he's got so many like comics, and he just sells that stuff, collects the money, and buys the next statue. And I feel like that's a cool way to collect things, right? Like, I've had this statue
in it for X amount of dollars, and you're just trying to flip cards.
Well,
it's statues or whatever.
He has the statue. The hype for it is now over. He'd rather sell that statue and get something newer that he sees that he likes, right?
Rather than just fill his place with like being a hoarder.
Exactly. Instead of adding to the pile, right? So like in the same scenario, he's got like these old comics that you know, obviously him and I are the same. We keep the comics that we really, really love, but there's comics we're willing to kind of part with. So he sells those, and then he buys some newer stuff. He buys not just comics. He'll use that money and buy like sketches from artists that he loves, right? And then frames them up and hangs them in his office is full of. There's so many awesome sketches from famous artists, comic book artists in his office. I walk in there and it's just like, you know, like
it's like upgrading your collectibles.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, you're not hoarding extra stuff, which is a bonus.
This is smart. I think I like this.
Yeah. And he was one of the first people that when he was talking to me about it, I was like, huh, that's a good way to do it. And then Matt, on the other hand, is a friend of mine who basically one day decided we're sitting on a bunch of stuff like that we don't really need. Why are we sitting on this? So he started eBaying stuff all day long. And I was kind of like, I don't really want to do eBay. I don't want to spend time doing that. But then he did the next best thing for me, which is he eBays my stuff for me.
Right.
And I remember him, and I remember the talk we had. It was like, I have all these old toys, right? And he's like, what are you holding on to these toys for? I'm like, I don't know. I thought maybe my kid would want to play with these toys when I have kids. And he was like, your kids don't want to play with that crap. Like, there's better stuff out there right now. Like, you gonna show him this like old He-Man? Be like, check it out. I used to play with this, and he'd be like, yeah. So this robot standing here is gonna do the same thing for me, you know? Like,
yeah. He's totally right about that one.
Your kids don't want to play with your old crap. Now, it's partially because it's old, but partially because they don't see the same value in it that you see, obviously. Right.
Well, they're not watching the cartoon that you were watching, where you then had to have that figure, to go along with the cartoon that you were watching.
Like, okay, just show them the He-Man song on YouTube.
Done.
I don't want my kid to go to school and get his butt kicked.
And then they'll also love He-Man.
I mean, like,
that's my advice.
I think that should be your recommendation for the day.
Oh no, I got a better one.
He's gonna top his LaCroix from the last one.
Tangerine LaCroix.
Oh god, you're making me want to drink another one, dude. I'm telling you, I found this key lime flavor. It's amazing.
Oh, key lime? I thought it was just lime. I've only seen lime.
Key lime. I know.
Is there sugar in it though?
Nope.
Huh.
No, man, it's LaCroix. It's the same thing.
LaCroix.
Zero fat, 0 sodium, 0 carbs, 0 protein, 0 calories.
At any rate, you could collect LaCroix. There's lots of different flavors.
Collect these fucking cans, dude. I've seen it.
Oh God, do you remember that? Did you guys wait? I should say remember that because I'm a little younger, I think, than at least Alan. But
what the hell?
I'm the oldest one here.
Oh, okay, all right. So there was this phase that, like, I don't know if this was just a thing for my generation or what, but like they all collected like empty bottles. Like,
okay, that's the
bottles.
You brought this up last time.
And you like display them. I'm like, what is this?
So you brought this up last time, and I told you I have a friend. So I have a friend, Eric. I'll just name drop him because I don't fucking care. But Eric collects
names to protect their identity.
Yeah, it's Eric. I'll tell you. I could tell you exactly where he lives.
Alan. Call him Derek from now on.
Derek. I'm sorry. So Derek had a habit of. So Derek collected. But this guy collected. He had a whole in his room upstairs. He had every like Star Wars toy, minus maybe like 3. Okay, he collected them, which was amazing. But then in his basement, he had bottles. Like he had all these old bottles, and I was like, "What the fuck is happening down here?" I'm not talking like a shelf with like 10 or 20. I'm talking like shelves, man. It's like my living room back there, full of bottles, and I was like, "This is a basement with stone floors. Like if this shit falls on the ground, it's game over. If somebody leans into one of these shelves wrong, it's game over." But I remember. He used to always go for like walks up and down the train tracks, and I just thought, man, he's a funny kid who likes to walk on the train tracks. Like, I was a punk rocker, I thought it was his thing, right? So I was like, let him do his thing. He was actually looking on the train tracks for bottles, and I remember one time he found an old ass Wizard of Oz bottle, like not broken, in pretty good condition. It was missing the top, you know, the metal top that popped off, but it was like a full like Wizard of Oz bottle, and you got to think about how long that bottle's been sitting there or laying there or whatever, right? Buried under all that dirt. How it just blew my mind, and it was valued at it's worth a lot of money. It's just a bottle, though. To me, it's just a bottle.
Here's the interesting thing that Derek brings up is that at what point does something become a collection, right? Like, let's say I've got a bottle. It's not a collection. Now I've got 2 bottles, right? 3 bottles. You know, like, it seems arbitrary. But the thing that's interesting is, like, those bottles in general are like, oh, he's got a ton of them, so it's impressive. If you just had like 5, nobody cares, right?
I mean, right. If he had like, if he had like 5, nobody cares. But he had like 5 really, really rare X, you know, like, I don't know. I can't even think of an example. Like the Power 9, the Power 9 for Magic.
Sure.
Right.
He had the Power 9 of rare bottles.
Yeah, exactly. He had the Power 9 of rare bottles. It's like, oh shit, they only made 9, you know, and he's got all of them or whatever. But that's very rare. I mean, I think if you're gonna, I think you got to have more than, like, I've got in our walk-in closet, man. I've got 4 or 5 giant comic book boxes full of comics. I'm talking
4 or 5. That's it. Like the long boxes.
I've got 4 long boxes and at least 4 or 5 of the short boxes.
We won't judge you by the size of your boxes, Alan. Don't worry.
You shouldn't.
Speak for yourself.
But I mean, I stopped. So like, honestly,
no boxes.
That's bad. I only collect. So now I still buy comics. I pretend to buy trades. And then the only comics I still collect really are like Hellboys, like individual issues and stuff. But I try to read them. Like the Hellboys, I like Hellboy. I like those comics all the time. So I usually just buy them. I see them, the one-offs, right? But like I love reading like Saga and stuff. But I just buy the trades because I've gotten to a point where I don't have room to keep. I was buying X-Men comics every week, you know?
Right.
And I was so busy trying to do my illustration career that I didn't have time to read them. And they were just piling up. I mean, I had piles on my shelf, and I'm just like, and one day I looked at those piles. I'm like, man, why are you buying all these comics? You're not even reading them right now.
Yep.
So I can, you know, I still collect the comics, but I try to save up my money to buy the old ones that I really liked as a kid that I still, you know, like that Batman I showed you guys earlier. That's a comic I wanted forever, you know? Mm-hmm. And I still would like, some point, I have a 3rd or 4th printing of the Superman action comics, but, you know, at some point I'll find an amazing fantasy with Spider-Man, but that's just a collector's thing for me at this point.
Did any of your parents like introduce you to like stamp or coin collecting at an early age?
So my dad worked for the post office. My dad actually just retired yesterday.
Nice.
And a quick funny side story, they spelled his freaking last name wrong. You've been there for 29 years, they're going to spell your last name wrong. I'm like, tell him to give you a new certificate. Like, it means nothing to him. He's like, it's not a big deal. It's fine. I don't want to cause any trouble. It's a certificate that says, good job, you've been here 29 years. And I said, that's cool. But I'm like, does it affect anything else? He's like, no. I'm like, but still, it's like a form of respect. They should spell your last name right. It's my last name too, which so insults me. Double insult. But yeah, he tried to get me into stamp collecting when I was younger. But you know how they do now? They have like Marvel. They have like comic book stamps. They have like astronaut stamps and all that. That stuff didn't start happening until like 10 years ago.
Right, but I think mainly because like printing production changed, so it made it much more accessible to have a wider range. And it was also probably trying to reach a new audience, because I don't think nearly as many people were collecting stamps. Like I remember seeing my dad's stamp collection book and be like, huh, and not really having an interest. But that shows that the collecting thing has been around for many generations, and it's only going to keep going, especially like with the blind bag stuff I was talking about with kids' toys now.
You think the stamp collecting is going to keep going?
No, just the collecting part.
Oh, God.
Just collecting it as a human nature element is going to keep going.
Well, that's never going away. And like what Gavin was saying with the stuff being digital, I think like comic books are you can read them digitally. You can read DC, Marvel, whatever. Any company that's smart has their stuff digital as well. But I feel like people still like, holding the comics. Like I read a lot of books on my Kindle when I travel because it's easier to travel with it. But at the end of the day, I prefer to read an actual like book. It's a like I don't know how to it's a feeling, right? Like I read comics on my iPad all day, but I'd love to just crack open my boxes and read some of those. But I kind of like the being a collector. So when I was younger, people always thought I read my comics like Bart Simpson, like heating up the tweezers and delicately turning each of the pages. I'm like, I'm not that crazy, but I try to not.
Close.
What's that?
Damn close.
I'm close. Yeah. I try not to have like greasy hands and stuff when I'm reading, right? I like to keep my shit clean. But books are books. I used to keep my books in pristine condition. Not my comics, but my books that are on the ones on the shelves here. Dude, I used to keep them in pristine condition forever. And then I realized it's never going to happen. It's almost impossible. You would have to like put it in a private library and never read it.
Yeah. And then what's the point in having that for the tactile experience if you're not actually going to open it up and turn the pages?
Correct. Exactly. Like books are meant to be read. Spines are...
Just get your book sealed in a thing of plastic and get a grade on it that says 9 out of 10.
Like I've got this,
and then
so here's
more money.
This is one of the oldest books. This is one of my favorite books. Okay, it's a Never Ending Story. This is not my recommendation. I'm just showing it to you. But this is a library copy. They were going to throw it away. They said the binding was broken and it's old. But I'm like, this looks fine. And I
heard the story about a guy who works at a bookstore, and what happens is when they order too many books, it's too expensive to ship the books back to the distributor, so they just have them destroy them and they refund them for the books. And so they rip the covers off.
Yep.
Right. And this guy's ripping the covers off these books, and then they call him up front because it gets really busy. So he runs up front. He's helping check out a customer, and he grabs the customer's books, rings them up, and then he rips the covers off the books that he's checking out. And he's like, "That'll be $50." And the customers look at him like, "What? Like, why'd you just rip the cover off that book?"
That's awesome.
And he's screwed because he can't explain like, oh, well, we just rip covers off the backs of books in the back because they're worthless.
So I used to work for Barnes & Noble in the receiving department. Yeah, that's what we just send back all the covers. And my manager was cool enough to be like, if you see a book you like, just take it, but we need the cover back.
Yeah,
right.
But man, the amount of stuff, like magazines was the worst. Like every week we were just throwing away piles of magazines. I was like, Jesus Christ. That's a lot.
So we're getting down to the last minutes of the show. We should move into recommendations. Alan, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You can go first.
All right. So my recommendation is in line with the things I collect this week. There's a reality TV show that is a guilty pleasure of mine. It's called Oddities. I've been binge watching this for the last few days. There's about 5 seasons of it on Amazon Prime, and it's essentially Pawn Stars for weirdos. It follows an oddities shop in New York that sells all sorts of crazy things. A recent episode had a mummified penis on it. So
what channel is that on?
I don't know what it was on originally. I got it on Amazon. So
I watched the first 2 seasons when it was airing, and I didn't realize that there were that many more seasons of it. I'll need to check that out.
Yeah, there's 5. There's some real cool stuff shows up in this show. So,
and there's some interesting characters showing the folks that collect a lot of the oddity stuff.
There's definitely some people that show up that are just as interesting. But yeah, check it out. That's my recommendation.
All right. So my
this week.
I figured I was going to talk about the comic books that's being collecting, and then we talked about digital stuff. So I was going to recommend this Marvel app. I don't remember if I recommended this yet or not. Can you see that? Is there a lot of glare?
There's some glare, and it's a little
bright.
Well, I don't know how to turn that down. Hang on. But give me 1 second here. This is the kind of stuff that bothers me. Here it is. I found it. I just got to turn this down. Okay, so you should be able to see it better now. Fuck it. They're still
Sorta, sure.
Either way, this is the app.
Great.
And then you basically can select. So, like in this case, I was reading the first appearance of Moon Knight. So if I select that, it brings up the comic book, and then read now, and it's kind of cool because like here's a whole comic book I can read, you know, digitally. And what I really like about this app is it has almost also, like you can see here's Amazing Fantasy with Spider-Man. It's got some of the new X-Men. It has almost every new issue and every old issue. It's missing, like I was talking to Brian. It was you I was talking to, right, last week?
Yep.
And we were trying to find Days.
It was an X Factor or X Force or an X Factor comic or something.
We were trying to find Days of the Future Present, and it doesn't exist in this app. So, but it has almost, I would say it's got, out of the Marvel database, it's got 95% of their comic books. You can read almost all the new stuff a week after it's out. And it's $70 for a full year of comics. And it's actually saved me a lot of money as far as going and buying tons of comics, because this way I get my fix of reading comics. I kind of lose the fix of collecting it a little bit. But if I see an issue and I'm like, this was a damn good issue, and I love the work, I love the panels in it, I like the artwork in it, I'll take a walk to the comic store, which is like 6 blocks away, and buy it, you know?
Nice.
So do any of these comics that are digital, do any of them do like animation in any of their cells? Because I think that they should do that.
That would be a good idea. You can zoom in on the cells, but I don't think any of them. I remember there was one company that did the animation stuff, right? The people that did like Prime, I think it was called. I forgot what the name of that comic book house was. It was old. It was back in like the 90s. They did comic books on CDs that you can read, and it would animate. I remember one of the main superheroes was a kid who was kind of like Shazam. Like he would say whatever the magic word was, and he became this like super strong superhero named Prime. But he had this like disgusting, like when he was transforming back to a kid, the Prime skin essentially just melted off of him.
Interesting.
They had another character called Ghost. I think it was Valiant Comics.
No. Yeah, Valiant sounds right.
The Valiant. They did Ghost. They had Prime. They did Barbed Wire.
Was it Valiant? I don't remember. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Ex Machina. It was that company.
No, Ex Machina was DC.
It's DC now. Oh no, I'm thinking of XL Manowar.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So that was the only company, Gavin, that if I remember correctly, that kind of animated they did slight animations to their cells, but I don't think it took off as well as people wanted it to.
Yeah. Well, the amount of time that you had to put in at that point in time to something that already takes a long time to get out in the course of a month.
Yeah.
You have a lot of work at that time.
I imagine someone's sitting around scanning these pages, right? Because none of them are digital. They're all, I mean, nowadays, I think the newer comics are painted digitally. Like the new X-Men stuff and all that, I think it's all digital painting, but there's got to be a handful of people still inking, so they got to scan those pages.
Well, somebody should figure it out.
Maybe it's you.
All right. So we're going to put Brian on the spot.
Let's see. All right. So something that I'm going to recommend is I have probably about 100 colors of this line of paints, these Reaper miniature paints.
Oh, yeah.
And I just have a wall of them, and I paint all of my stuff with them, and I love their paints. I can't recommend them enough. I stumbled on them accidentally by backing one of their Kickstarters for some miniatures, and I started painting other things with them, and I just love them. And
did you ever pull the shakers out?
Every now and again, when it runs real low, I dump it out on my palette, and then the ball rolls away.
Skulls, right?
What's that?
One of the more popular Magic the Gathering artists actually paints all of his work with those. I can't remember who it was. He works in the Games Workshop paints.
Nice. Yeah. That's I paint exclusively in that stuff now, except for like when I'm doing a watercolor thing. But yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, the little shaker inside of there is a skull.
I will have to look at it next time and get what's left of the paint off of them.
I had a friend that would take that and then he'd cut off the heads of because we did this miniature society. It's called the Military Miniature Society of Illinois, and one day they introduced fantasy characters. So we would submit our fantasy characters. He would cut off the heads of all the skulls and put those little skulls from the Reapers on them.
That's awesome.
All right, well, that is the end of our episode.
So we got.
Thanks for being on, Brian. We appreciate.
Thanks for having me.
Jumping in with
Thank you, sir.
It's been fun.
It's been a good time.
Yeah. So if anybody's got questions for us next week, go ahead and email us at askWDYTA@gmail.com.
That is correct. askWDYTA. I gotta figure out what's going on, man. I created that account and somehow it made it like I get some emails that I'm supposed to get to my main account to this account.
Nice.
What happened? So I don't know. I broke something.
One of these days you'll get over your technical challenges, Alan.
I'm supposed to be good at this.
It gets worse the older you get.
That's it for this week, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys later.